I've learnt history at school, and Sikhs were never mentioned in any wars. And I started volunteering with World War One history research, and then this is where the Anglo-Sikh War workshops came up. So you can see backtracking the role Sikhs have played as warriors and soldiers throughout.
So it's tempting to think that the Anglo-Sikh relationship starts in the Anglo-Sikh Wars in 1845 and 1849. In reality, it started a couple of decades before that, with the East India Company bumping against the Sikhs in different parts of India. But it really was on the battlefields in Punjab where the two people met most formidably. And something really interesting happened there as the British took Punjab. There was this kind of mutual admiration that was formed of these men as soldiers, and that really manifests itself in two ways. One is that the British started to recruit very heavily from Sikhs, but it also meant that just 8 years later, when the Indian army mutinied against Britain, that the Sikhs in the Indian army actually found more kinship with the Britons than they did with the Indians, who of course were a foreign country at the time that their country was taken. So by the time of the First World War in 1914, the Indian army was composed of about 20% Sikh forces, a remarkable number given that Sikhs barely made up 1% of the population. So as 1.5 million men from India went to the First World War, a disproportionately high proportion came from the Sikh community, furthering that relationship. And again, that was repeated in the Second World War, when 2.5 million men from India went to the war. Again, a disproportionately high number from the Sikh community. That relationship then takes a real battering in 1947 and independence, which for the rest of India was a moment of joy, a moment of release from imperialism. But the Sikhs found themselves in a country that was actually partitioned in half, and their traditional land of Punjab was cut into two components. That tradition of being in the army and being in the civil service, as well as the displacement that they felt during partition, has really turned the Sikhs into a very international community. So it's no surprise that large numbers of Sikhs from the Punjab came to the United Kingdom in the 50s and the 1960s as Britain was rebuilding itself after the war, but they also went to North America and parts of Southeast Asia, really forming a much more global community than they were just 100 years earlier.
I think I sit on the fence because either way, the items were stolen or looted, and for any community, that's always going to feel like something's been taken away from them. And after so many years, there are probably many people who resent what had happened, or the British taken so many jewels and so many objects of wealth that were of that country. They basically stole the wealth away. But are they preserving it as well as we could? Perhaps. Yes, and perhaps better, actually. You do question whether if the item was to go back to its home country, would it be looked after in the same way? Would it be handled in the same way? We got the opportunity to hold the objects, but with great care, with gloves on, with all the proper equipment, so we weren't tarnishing them, we weren't changing them, we weren't affecting them in any way. And I know in my home country, it might not be the same way at all.
You know, the modern Sikh experience is global. You know, we as a community have moved around the world, and part of that is because is a hangover from imperialism and that colonial history that we have. So in many respects, these objects being in the UK is really a reflection of Sikh history, something that happened in the middle of the 19th century and then really continues to today. But actually these objects are a little bit more than that. They're a way of Sikhs in this country to be able to connect very tangibly with their heritage, which is here. It is very accessible, and also crucially, it's maintained and kept very well. And we've seen, sadly, that in India and in Pakistan, which is where these objects originate from, there hasn't been that care and attention.